If you are an Aspie, that is a person with Asperger syndrome, chances are you value your downtime. That is to say, those moments when you have time all by yourself. That's a very special time for you, and quite frankly, you prefer to be alone rather than socialize with other people. It makes you happy. Well, there are some very good reasons why that is. And number one is because if you're an Aspie, chances are you have a average or higher than average IQ. And studies show that people with high intelligence prefer to be alone. And they give us a couple of reasons. So, number one is intelligence. One of the reasons why you prefer to be alone because you just don't need social connections. Now, we get this from an article in Inc. magazine that was citing studies where they realized that people needed social contact to be happy. But when it came to those individuals with Asperger syndrome, particularly those with higher IQs, whether they had Asperger's or not, they were just different. They actually preferred or found happiness in loneliness, or at least being alone, I should say. So they just don't need social connections. Now, I guess there was a point in time in history. And by the way, because we're recording at night, there may be a little lag in the video, but there was a point in time in history where it was tough to be alone. There were mountain men, that went out in the wilderness and did trapping or whatever they did. And they managed to survive, but most of us, we needed to have that community just to sustain life, to have food, to have water, to have help in time of need. We couldn't just pick up a cell phone and call somebody and say, hey, I had an accident. I need somebody to come help me. That wasn't the way it was. You can't just sit in your office somewhere and say, hey, I need help if you have no way to contact people. So in modern society, according to this study, they found that highly intelligent people really don't need those social connections for anything, whereas people maybe who are maybe not quite so intelligent may not have the need for loneliness or even want it. Well, number two is this, intelligence also. Intelligent people, I should say, tend to focus on long-term goals. They're focused. I can't help but to think of individuals who accomplished great inventions, innovative people. Typically, they did most of their research in a laboratory where they were by themselves. I'm thinking of Elon Musk. He spent, I don't know how many hours a day alone or maybe with his associate working on computers in an office. And they would even sleep on the sofa, socializing with something. I'm sure they did some of it, but just wasn't something that they needed. They just weren't focused on that. They were focused on their long-term goals. Number three is this. We prefer to be alone because we want to avoid distractions. We want to enhance our ability to concentrate. Okay, here I am sitting alone in a cabin. Imagine how difficult it would be for me to focus and concentrate on what I'm doing if I were not alone. Now, I know some guys do videos and they have cats and dogs walking around. That doesn't seem to be a distraction. And I know there are some professionals who record in studios. They're busy. They got a lot of people. But I would have a difficult time focusing on what I'm doing right at this very moment if I had other people in the cabin with me, particularly kids. Or if I was trying to carry on some kind of a social conversation with somebody else other than an interview that had nothing whatsoever to do with a video, or if somebody came in and said, hey, you want a pizza? Okay, maybe I could tolerate that, depending on the pizza, but, you get the point. We need to concentrate on what we're doing, and it's just a lot easier to do it when we're alone. Other people, I guess, just don't value concentration. Well, they do sometimes. They're doing homework or whatever, maybe. But by and large, we really cherish these few moments we have all by ourselves. Number four, to avoid negativity. Now, this is kind of unique to people who have Asperger syndrome, not exclusively unique, but nearly so. And that we find that when we get around other people, a social environment, that we're just bombarded with all kinds of negativity that other people just don't have to endure. You know, the noise, the lights, the sounds that drives us, sometimes drives us absolutely crazy. But what's more, sometimes there's just those individual social interactions. The way I like to say it is it takes two heads to butt heads. What if there are no two heads? What if you're just all by yourself? Now, some people say two heads are better than one. I found that two heads tend to argue with each other. That when you have two or more people in a room, there's this thing called social posturing, where people want to diss your idea and project their idea, advance their idea based on ego. Not because your idea is bad or their idea is good. I mean, maybe that's true, but that's not their motive. They just want to climb the social ladder, so to speak. They're jockeying for social dominance. I don't know about you, but I need absolutely positively none of that whatsoever. I mean, I just don't. I don't want to climb a social ladder. I don't care if you get ahead or you get behind. I just want to get my job done. Whatever it is I'm focusing on, whatever it is I'm doing, that's what I want to do. Number 5, uninterrupted creativity. Kind of the same as number 4, but if you're going to be a creative person, if you're going to do things that emanate from your mind, you need to be able to think. You don't need those distractions. And the example that I like to use many times is, have you ever tried counting something, like counting money, and somebody starts talking to you, and you lose count? You lose your place. Have you ever tried to study? Somebody comes in and talks to you. Remember when I was in college, I was staying with, we were traveling, and I was staying with an older family, and I was trying to study, and this guy was watching the news on television. And as I was studying, he would keep making his commentary on what was being said on the news. It's kind of hard to concentrate when someone, you're just sitting there reading. You're not doing anything, right? Well, that's the way they see it. But when you're alone, you just don't have those, distractions. Your creativity, whatever it is you're working on, you can focus on it so much better without interruption. So you take the phone off the hook, or we did that in the old days. Nowadays, you just have a button you push that silences the phone. But back when we had rotary phones, just took it off the hook. Didn't even have a plug-in. It was hardwired. Couldn't unplug it. Number 6. I almost skipped one. Number 6 is to remove ourselves from toxic environments. Now, this is something that I touched on just a moment ago. But when you are with other people, there's a lot of toxicity that I think other people actually thrive on it. It's kind of like food for their soul. They like a toxic atmosphere because they like to fight. They like the give and take. They actually like the social climbing. Makes them feel alive. I don't know why they like it. To me, it's just kind of frustrating. But when we find ourselves in the social environments, we typically find those environments, with few exceptions, to be very toxic. There's a lot of anxiety. People are criticizing each other and you. People are ridiculing you. If you have Asperger syndrome, you probably get a lot of that, or at least you did in the past. And there's also what I just call it social silliness. We mentioned social climbing a moment ago, where people are posturing and jockeying for social position. They're just silly. I mean, who cares? Who cares who the alpha male is or isn't, or the alpha female, or who cares who is dissing who and why they're doing it? They're playing these games of allegiance and alliances and so forth. So what is all that? Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be in that mess, so go ahead and do what you want to do. Some people call this, I've heard it called keeping score, where you will say something and somebody will try to make a smart remark. Score 1 point for me, 0 for you. No thanks. I just go home, be alone. I don't have to put up with that stuff. So number 6 is we remove ourselves from toxic environments. Then that takes us to number 7. This one I really like, and that is one of the advantages of being alone, is we get the opportunity to be what I call just be at home with your true self. What is your true self? Well, I talked about this in other videos, and I hope you're watching some of those other videos. We got bunches of them. I mean, scores of videos. We talk about this stuff, and you can really dig into it. But when I talk about being at home, being alone with yourself, what I'm saying is that you're a different person when you're all by yourself. At least I am, and I think maybe some other Aspergers are. I call this conjoined personalities. You've heard me talk about this before, probably, but it's not that we have split personalities. But when we are out and about, we tend to have a different persona. It's almost like we're wearing a mask. Some people do. They put on a show when they're with others. But with people with Asperger syndrome, sometimes it's not a mask. I mean, there's actually a different personality. There's a personality that feels very inhibited, that is intimidated by the presence of others. Our brains kind of scramble with all the input of noise and distractions that are around us. And because our brain, scrambled brains, and because our brains seem to be a little bit scrambled, that's reflected in the way we talk. We can't even put a sentence together because our minds are just kind of, scrambled. So that is a different personality. Not totally. It's, what did we call it? Conjoined personality. It's still me, but it's a totally different side of me that I've actually had people tell me this, that they would see me one time and get to know me, and then they'd see me another time, and they would tell me that I'm a different person. And that is because somehow my brain managed to override the conjoined personality. Well, I'm thinking that the confident me is the true me, and that's who shows up when I go home. That other guy, whoever that happens to be, he just stays on the doorstep till the phone rings, and then he comes back sometimes if you talk to somebody on the phone. That's really odd. But one of the reasons that I like to be alone is I just like to be at home with that real self, with that true self. All right, there's 7. How many of those did you check off? Do they apply to you? Let us know in the comment section. And why do you like to be alone? Or do you? Maybe you're a person with Asperger syndrome and you just don't like to be alone. You like to be in a crowd. I find that hard to believe because it's almost a definition of Asperger syndrome is you prefer to be alone, because virtually everybody with Asperger syndrome, by definition, struggles with social interactions. Now, what you see on the screen, a couple rectangles, there are video suggestions in there, so this conversation ends only when you say it ends, because we got other things to talk about. So if you want to join us for more conversation, just click on either one of those videos that you see on the screen right now.